The sound of breaking glass echoed through the abandoned house as Han Jun-seok pushed open the rotting door. What he found inside would shatter every rule he'd lived by for 34 years. A young black woman, barely breathing, clutched a 6-month-old baby to her chest. Her clothes were torn, her face gaunt from hunger, but her eyes burned with a mother's desperate love. When she whispered those 4 words that would change everything, "Please save my daughter," this Korean crime boss had no idea he was about to abandon his empire, his power, and everything he'd built to become something he never thought possible. A father. But some rules are meant to be broken, and some love is worth losing everything for. Snow fell heavily on the deserted streets of Bend, Oregon, creating a silent blanket that muffled any sound. Han Jun-seok adjusted his dark coat while checking his watch, 11:47 p.m. The operation was running perfectly, exactly as planned. His organization didn't tolerate imprecision, and he hadn't reached his position by accepting anything less than flawless execution. "Kang, status report," he spoke quietly into his radio, his breath forming small clouds in the frigid air. "North sector clear, boss. No movement detected," came the immediate response from Kang Min-jae, his most trusted lieutenant. "Yoon has the perimeter secured." "Copy that. Beck, how's the south?" "All quiet here, Jun-seok. Lim has eyes on the main road. We're good to proceed." Baek Jun-ho's voice crackled through the static. The abandoned residential area stretched before them like a ghost town. Foreclosed homes stood like broken teeth against the winter sky, their windows dark and empty. This was supposed to be a simple verification run. Check the area, ensure no unwanted eyes, and confirm the route for tomorrow's major shipment. Nothing complicated, nothing personal. Jun-seok had been running operations like this for over a decade. Clean, efficient, emotionless. The Korean organization he led operated with military precision, and emotions were a luxury they couldn't afford. He'd learned that lesson early, watching his mentor get eliminated for showing weakness. In their world, compassion was a death sentence. The largest house at the end of the street caught his attention. 3 stories, completely dark, with a condemned sign hanging askew on the front gate. Perfect for a final security check. He approached alone, standard protocol for reconnaissance. The front door hung off its hinges, creaking softly in the wind. Broken glass crunched under his boots as he stepped inside. The smell hit him immediately. Dampness, decay, and something else. Something that made his trained instincts sharpen. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing water-stained walls and debris scattered across the floor. He moved methodically through the first floor, checking corners, listening for any sound that didn't belong. Nothing. The stairs groaned under his weight as he climbed to the second floor. More empty rooms, more decay. He was about to radio the all-clear when he heard it. The faintest sound, like a whisper or a sigh. Jun-seok froze, hand moving instinctively to the weapon concealed beneath his coat. He followed the sound to a room at the end of the hallway. The door was slightly ajar, and through the gap, he could see a faint movement. He pushed the door open slowly, flashlight raised. What he saw stopped him cold. In the corner of the room, huddled against the wall, sat a young woman. She couldn't have been more than 28, her dark skin pale from cold and exhaustion. Her clothes were torn and dirty, hanging loosely on her thin frame. But it wasn't her condition that made Jun-seok's breath catch. It was the tiny bundle she held against her chest. A baby, maybe 6 months old, wrapped in what looked like a torn blanket. The infant was nursing, completely oblivious to the cold and desperation surrounding her. The woman looked up at him with eyes that held no fear, only a bone-deep exhaustion, and something else, a fierce, protective love that reminded him of a lioness guarding her cub. She didn't try to run or hide. She just held her baby closer and waited. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible, "don't hurt us." Jun-seok lowered his flashlight, his mind racing. This wasn't part of the plan. This was exactly the kind of complication his organization taught him to avoid. Civilians were problems. Witnesses were liabilities. The smart move, the safe move, was to walk away and pretend he'd never seen them. But something in her eyes held him frozen. "What are you doing here?" he asked quietly, his English accent free despite Korean being his first language. We have nowhere else to go," she replied, her voice stronger now but still shaking from cold. "I'm sorry. We'll leave. Just give me a minute to—" She tried to stand but swayed dangerously. Jun-seok found himself stepping forward before he could stop himself. "Don't," he said, raising a hand. "Don't move. You're hypothermic." The baby made a small sound, and the woman looked down with such tenderness that something twisted in Jun Seok's chest. He'd never seen love like that. Pure, selfless, absolute. "What's your name?" he heard himself ask. "Evelyn," she whispered. "Evelyn Harper, this is Lily." "How long have you been here, Evelyn?" 3 days, maybe 4. I lost track." Her words were starting to slur slightly. "My husband, Nathan, he died 2 weeks ago. Work accident, no insurance. They took our apartment. I had nowhere." She trailed off, her eyes fluttering. The baby, Lily, had stopped nursing and was making small, distressed sounds. Jun Seok's radio crackled. "Boss, everything okay up there? You've been quiet for 10 minutes. He looked at Evelyn, at tiny Lily, at the desperation and love and slowly fading hope in this mother's eyes. Every rule he'd ever learned screamed at him to walk away. Report the location as clear. Let someone else deal with this problem. Instead, he pressed the radio button. "All clear, heading back down. Give me 5 more minutes." He turned back to Evelyn, who was watching him with a mixture of confusion and desperate hope. "Listen to me carefully," he said, kneeling down to her level. "You're in serious danger here. This cold will kill you both if you stay another night." "I know," she whispered, tears starting to freeze on her cheeks. "But I can't. The shelters, they'll take her away. They'll say I'm unfit. I can't lose her. She's all I have left of Nathan. She's all I have left of anything." The baby started crying, a thin, weak sound that cut through Jun Seok like a blade. Evelyn tried to comfort her, but her movements were becoming sluggish. Hypothermia was setting in fast. "Please!" Evelyn looked up at him, and in that moment Jun Seok saw something that would haunt him forever. A mother's love so pure it was willing to die rather than risk losing her child. "Please, save my daughter." Those 4 words hit him like a physical blow. In his world, people begged for their own lives, for mercy, for another chance. But this woman, dying in front of him, wasn't asking for herself. She was asking for her baby. Jun Seok stared at her for a long moment, feeling something crack inside his chest. Every rule, every lesson, every survival instinct he'd developed over 34 years was screaming at him to walk away. Instead, he took off his coat. "Here," he said, wrapping it around both Evelyn and Lily. "This will help with the cold." Evelyn's eyes widened in surprise. You're helping us? I'm going to get you both out of here," he said, though he had no idea how or why he'd just made that promise. "Boss?" The radio crackled again. "We need to move soon, the schedule. Copy that on my way down." He looked at Evelyn again. "I have to go now, but I'm coming back. Do you understand? I'm coming back for both of you." "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you help us?" Jun Seok paused at the door, not sure how to answer a question he couldn't answer for himself. "Because," he said finally, "some things are more important than rules." The drive back to the hotel was the longest 20 minutes of Jun Seok's life. His mind raced as he tried to process what had just happened. In the span of 15 minutes, he'd gone from conducting a routine security check to promising aid to 2 complete strangers who could compromise everything he'd built. "Operations complete," he announced to his team as they gathered in the hotel lobby. "Areas secure for tomorrow's run." Kang Min-jae studied his boss's face carefully. After 8 years of working together, he could read Jun Seok's moods better than anyone. "Everything all right? You seem distracted." "Just tired," Jun Seok replied, but his mind was already racing ahead to logistics. Food, medical attention, somewhere warm and safe. "Get some rest. We have an early start tomorrow." As his team dispersed to their rooms, Jun Seok sat alone in his suite, staring out at the snow-covered city. The smart play was obvious. Forget what he'd seen, complete the mission, return to Seattle. Evelyn and Lily weren't his responsibility. He had his own organization to think about, his own people to protect, but every time he closed his eyes, he saw Lily's tiny face and heard Evelyn's whispered plea, "Please save my daughter." At 2 a.m. he made his decision. Jun Seok quietly gathered supplies from the hotel, blankets from housekeeping, food from the kitchen, a first aid kit from behind the front desk. Howard Bennett, the night manager, didn't ask questions when Jun Seok slipped him $500 for his discretion. The drive back to the abandoned house felt like a journey to another world. With each mile he was moving further away from everything he'd known, everything he'd been taught to value. The house was silent when he returned. For a terrifying moment, he thought he was too late. Then he heard it, Lily's weak crying from upstairs. He found them in the same corner, but Evelyn's condition had worsened dramatically. Her lips were blue, her breathing shallow and irregular. Lily was crying weakly, her tiny body shivering despite being pressed against her mother's chest. "Evelyn," he said softly, kneeling beside them. "I'm back." Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glassy. You came back," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I promised I would." He quickly wrapped fresh blankets around both of them and opened a bottle of water. "Here, try to drink this." Evelyn managed a few small sips, but her hands were shaking too badly to hold the bottle. Junseok helped her, then carefully took Lily into his arms. The baby was so light, so fragile. He'd never held an infant before, and the responsibility was terrifying. "She's hungry," Evelyn whispered. "I tried to feed her, but I don't think I have enough milk anymore. I haven't eaten in." "When was the last time you had a real meal?" "I don't remember. Maybe a week? I found some crackers in one of the other houses, but I gave most of them to a stray dog. Seemed hungrier than me." Even dying, she was thinking of others. Junseok felt something shift inside him, something he'd thought was dead years ago. "We need to get you to a hospital," he said. "No." Evelyn's response was immediate and fierce. "No hospitals. They'll call social services. They'll take Lily. I can't. I won't let them take her." "Evelyn, you're dying without medical attention." "Then I die," she said simply. "But I won't risk losing her. She's all I have. She's all Nathan left me." Junseok looked down at Lily, who had stopped crying and was staring up at him with dark, serious eyes. Something about her gaze reminded him of his little sister, Minna, who died when he was 16. The same innocence, the same trust. "Tell me about Nathan," he said, settling more comfortably beside them. Evelyn's face softened. He was everything good in the world, worked construction, saved every penny so we could buy a house someday. When I got pregnant, he was so excited. He'd talk to my belly every night, telling Lily about all the things he wanted to show her. Her voice broke slightly. The day she was born, he cried, this big, tough construction worker, crying because his daughter was so beautiful. He said she was going to change the world. What happened to him? Scaffolding collapse. He was trying to help a co-worker who was trapped. That was Nathan, always helping others, even when it put him at risk. She coughed, a harsh sound that shook her whole body. The company said it was operator error. No insurance payout, no pension, nothing. Junseok felt anger building in his chest. Not the cold, calculated anger he was used to, but something hot and protective. What about family, friends? Nathan was an orphan, like me. We met in foster care when we were teenagers. We promised we'd never let our children go through what we did. That's why I can't let them take her. Lily made a small sound, and Evelyn tried to lift her arms to take her back, but she was too weak. Junseok found himself naturally adjusting his hold, supporting the baby's head the way he'd seen in movies. "You're good with her," Evelyn whispered, a small smile crossing her face. "I don't know anything about babies. Neither did I at first, but love teaches you." She looked at him with curious eyes. "What's your name?" I never asked. "Junseok, Han Junseok." "Korean?" "Yes." "What do you do, Junseok?" He hesitated. "How do you tell a dying mother that you're a criminal, that you've spent your adult life breaking laws and hurting people?" "I'm in business. Import-export." Evelyn nodded weakly. "That's why you're here? Business?" Something like that. They sat in silence for a while. The only sounds Lily's soft breathing and the wind howling outside. Junseok found himself studying the baby's face, her tiny nose, her perfect little fingers, the way she seemed to trust him completely despite being held by a stranger. "Junseok?" Evelyn's voice was getting weaker. "Yes? If something happens to me, if I don't make it..." "Don't talk like that. We're going to get you help." "Please," she interrupted, using what little strength she had left. "Listen to me. If I don't make it, promise me you won't let them put her in the system. Promise me you'll find her a good family. People who will love her like Nathan and I would have." Junseok looked down at Lily, then back at Evelyn. In her eyes, he saw the same desperate love he'd seen hours earlier, but now it was mixed with acceptance. She knew she was dying. "I promise," he said, and meant it. Evelyn closed her eyes, a single tear rolling down her cheek. "Thank you. For coming back. For caring about someone you don't even know. Nathan would have liked you. Evelyn. Her middle name is Grace," she whispered. "Lily Grace Harper. She was born on March 15th. She loves music. Nathan used to sing to her every night. She's going to be smart, like her daddy, and strong like her mama had to be." Her breathing was becoming more labored, but she continued. "In my pocket. There's a letter. I wrote it for her, for when she's older. About Nathan, about how much we loved her, about how we never wanted to leave her." Junseok carefully reached into her coat pocket and found a folded piece of paper, worn soft from handling. "Promise me," Evelyn said, her voice barely a whisper now. "Promise me she'll know she was loved. Promise me she'll know we didn't abandon her." "I promise," Junseok said, his own voice thick with emotion he didn't understand. Evelyn smiled, a peaceful expression crossing her face. "Please save my daughter," she whispered one last time, and then she was gone. Junseok sat in the silence, holding Lily as she slept peacefully in his arms, unaware that her world had just changed forever. He looked at Evelyn's still face, at the woman who had died asking not for her own salvation, but for her daughter's. In that moment, every rule he'd ever lived by crumbled to dust. Dawn was breaking over bend when Junseok finally moved. Lily had woken twice during the night, crying for food he couldn't provide, comfort he didn't know how to give. Each time he'd managed to soothe her back to sleep, but he knew that wouldn't work much longer. He looked down at Evelyn's peaceful face one last time, then carefully wrapped her in one of the blankets. She deserved better than this abandoned house, but he couldn't risk the questions that would come with reporting her death. "I'm sorry," he whispered to her, "but I'll keep my promise." Lily stirred in his arms, her dark eyes opening to look at him. She didn't cry this time, just watched him with that same serious expression that had struck him the night before. "Okay, little one," he said softly. "Let's figure this out." The drive back to the hotel was complicated by Lily's crying. She was hungry, and Junseok had no idea how to help her. He stopped at an all-night pharmacy and bought formula, bottles, diapers, and baby clothes, drawing curious looks from the night clerk. "First time?" the clerk asked with a knowing smile. "Something like that," Junseok replied. Back at the hotel, he faced his first real challenge, explaining a baby to his team. He'd managed to get to his room undetected, but Lily's crying would soon draw attention. His phone buzzed. A text from Kang Min-jae. "Meeting in your room in 10. Need to discuss today's schedule." Junseok looked at Lily, who was finally quiet after managing to drink some formula. She was so small, so completely dependent on him. The weight of responsibility was crushing. 10 minutes later, his door opened and Kang walked in, followed by Yoon Sung-hyun. They both stopped dead when they saw Junseok sitting on the bed, holding a baby. "Boss," Kang said slowly, "what the hell is that?" "Her name is Lily," Junseok replied calmly. "Okay," Yoon said, clearly struggling to process the situation. "Why do you have a baby named Lily?" Junseok had been preparing for this conversation all night, but now that it was happening, he realized there was no way to explain it that would make sense to them. "Her mother died last night. She has no one else." The silence that followed was deafening. Kang and Yoon exchanged glances that spoke volumes. "Boss," Kang said carefully, "we need to talk about this. Privately." Junseok looked down at Lily, who was sleeping peacefully in his arms. "Whatever you have to say, you can say it in front of her. She's a baby, Junseok. She can't understand us. She's my responsibility now. That means she's part of this conversation." Kang sat down heavily in the room's single chair. "Okay, let's start with the obvious question. What's your plan here? We have a major operation today, and you're holding an infant. The operation continues as planned. I'll figure out the rest later." "Figure out what, exactly? You can't just keep a baby." "Junseok, that's not how this works." "How what works?" "Our life," Yoon exploded, then immediately lowered his voice when Lily stirred. "Our life, boss. We're not family men. We're criminals. We don't have white picket fences and soccer practice. We have enemies who would use a baby against us in a heartbeat." Junseok felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Are you threatening her?" "No," Kang said quickly. God no, but Yoon's right about the danger. If word gets out that you have a weakness, that you care about something more than the organization, then what? They'll come after her. They'll come after both of you, Kang said quietly. And they'll win because you'll do anything to protect her. That's what caring about someone means in our world. It means giving your enemies a weapon to use against you. Jun-seok looked down at Lily's sleeping face. Such a small thing to cause such a big problem. So what are you suggesting? Find her a good family, Yoon said. Rich people who can't have kids. They'll take good care of her, give her everything she needs. And then what? I just say forget about her. You move on, Kang said, like you always do, like we all do. Jun-seok was quiet for a long moment, thinking about Evelyn's last words. Promise me she'll know she was loved. No, he said finally. No, what? No, I'm not giving her away. No, I'm not moving on. No, I'm not forgetting about her. Kang leaned forward. Boss, you're not thinking clearly. This isn't rational. Since when has anything about our lives been rational? Jun-seok stood up, still holding Lily. We kill people for money. We smuggle drugs and weapons. We threaten families and destroy lives. And you're telling me that caring for one innocent baby is irrational? It's different, and you know it, Yoon said. Those other things, they're business. This is personal. Personal gets you killed in our world. Then maybe it's time to change worlds. The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Kang and Yoon stared at him in shock. You don't mean that, Kang said. Don't I? Jun-seok, you've been building this organization for 15 years. You have over 100 people depending on you. You can't just walk away. Watch me. Lily woke up and started crying, a thin, hungry sound that cut through the tension in the room. Jun-seok automatically started rocking her, making soft, shushing sounds. Look at yourself, Yoon said, not unkindly. You've known her for 12 hours, and you're already acting like a father. What happens when she gets sick, when she needs surgery, when she starts asking questions about why Daddy carries a gun and why strange men come to the house at all hours? I'll figure it out. With what money? You think you can just take organization funds and disappear? You think they'll let you walk away with their investment? Jun-seok felt the walls closing in. Everything they were saying was true. He couldn't protect Lily and stay in the organization, but he couldn't provide for her if he left either. His phone rang. The caller ID made his blood run cold. Director Kim, the head of their organization, calling from Seoul. Answer it, Kang said quietly. And for God's sake, don't mention the baby. Jun-seok looked at Lily, then at his phone. In that moment, he realized he was standing at a crossroads that would define the rest of his life. He answered the call. Director Kim. Jun-seok, I trust today's operation is proceeding smoothly. Yes, sir. Everything is on schedule. Excellent. I have some additional instructions for you. After today's shipment is complete, I need you to handle a personal matter for me. Jun-seok's blood chilled. What kind of personal matter? There's been some unpleasantness in our Seattle operations. A family that owes us money has been uncooperative. I need you to send a message. What kind of message? The permanent kind. The whole family. Jun-seok. No witnesses, no loose ends. Jun-seok looked down at Lily, sleeping peacefully in his arms. The innocent trust on her face was a stark contrast to the violence being discussed over the phone. Sir, if I may ask, what did they do? They stole from us $50,000, but more importantly, they showed disrespect. That cannot be tolerated. $50,000, the same amount Jun-seok had in his personal account. The same amount he'd been planning to use to help Lily. How many children? He heard himself ask. Excuse me? The family. How many children do they have? There was a pause. Why does that matter? I like to know the scope of the operation. 2 children, young ones. Does that change anything? Jun-seok closed his eyes. No, sir, I'll handle it. Good. I knew I could count on you. You've always understood what loyalty means. Their call ended, and Jun-seok stared at his phone. Kang and Yoon were watching him carefully. What did he want? Kang asked. A family in Seattle. They owe money. How much? 50,000. Yoon whistled low. That's not worth killing a whole family over. It's not about the money, Jun-seok said quietly. It's about control, about fear, about making sure everyone knows what happens when you cross us. He looked down at Lily again. In a few years, she'd be the same age as the children he was supposed to kill, innocent, trusting, completely dependent on the adults in their lives to protect them. "I can't do it," he said. "What?" "I can't kill children, not anymore." Kang stood up slowly. "Boss, you need to think about what you're saying. If you refuse a direct order from Director Kim, I know what happens." "Do you?" "Because I don't think you're thinking clearly right now. You're emotional, and that's understandable. But you need to separate your feelings about this baby from your responsibilities to the organization." Jun Seok looked at his oldest friend, his most trusted lieutenant, and realized they were speaking different languages now. "What if I can't?" he asked. "What if I can't separate them anymore?" "Then you're going to get us all killed," Yoon said bluntly. Lily stirred in his arms, making a small sound. Without thinking, Jun Seok adjusted his hold, supporting her head more carefully. The movement was becoming natural already. "There's something else," he said quietly. "What?" "Her mother. Before she died, she made me promise something." "What kind of promise?" "That Lily would know she was loved, that she'd know her parents didn't abandon her." Kang rubbed his face tiredly. "Boss, you can't keep a promise to a dead woman if it gets you killed." "Can't I?" "No, you can't, because then who takes care of the baby? You think Director Kim is going to let her live if he decides you're a liability?" The words hit Jun Seok like a physical blow. He'd been so focused on protecting Lily from the world that he hadn't considered what would happen if the world came looking for him. "So what are you saying, that I should give her up to protect her?" "I'm saying you should think about what's best for her, not what makes you feel better about yourself." Jun Seok walked to the window, still holding Lily. Outside, the snow was still falling, covering the world in pristine white. Everything looked clean and peaceful, but he knew that was an illusion. Beneath the snow, the world was still the same dangerous place it had always been. "What if there was another option?" he said finally. "What kind of option?" "What if I could give her everything she needs and still keep my promise to her mother?" Kang and Yoon exchanged glances again. "We're listening," Kang said carefully. Jun Seok turned back to them, his decision crystallizing as he spoke. "I'm going to break every rule we've ever lived by." The next few hours passed in a blur of careful planning and desperate improvisation. While Kang and Yoon handled the day's shipment operation, Jun Seok made a series of phone calls that would change everything. First, he called Dr. Emily Crawford, a pediatrician he'd researched online. He told her he was a single father who needed immediate help with his infant daughter, and that money was no object. She agreed to meet him at her private clinic that afternoon. Second, he called Daniel Park, a Korean-American lawyer who specialized in adoption and family law. The conversation was more complicated. "Mr. Han," Daniel said carefully, "what you're describing is highly unusual. You want to legally adopt a child whose mother just died, but you have no documentation of her death, no proof of your relationship to the family, and no official record of the child's birth." "That's correct." "Sir, I have to ask, is this child legally yours to adopt?" Jun Seok looked down at Lily, who was sleeping in a makeshift bed he'd created from hotel pillows. "She has no one else. Her mother asked me to take care of her." "That's not the same thing as legal guardianship. Without proper documentation, how much would it cost to make the documentation proper?" There was a long pause. "Mr. Han, I can't be party to falsifying legal documents." "I'm not asking you to falsify anything. I'm asking you to help me navigate a complicated situation so that an orphaned child can have a stable home. The proper channel would be to contact social services." "No." Jun Seok's voice was firm. "That's not an option." "Then I'm afraid I can't help you." Jun Seok ended the call and immediately dialed another number. This lawyer was less scrupulous and more expensive, but within an hour he had a plan. It would cost him nearly everything he had saved, but it would give Lily a legal identity and him legal guardianship. Dr. Crawford was a different challenge entirely. "She's malnourished," the doctor said after examining Lily, "but not dangerously so. Someone's been taking good care of her despite difficult circumstances." "Her mother," Jun Seok said. "She died yesterday." "I'm sorry for your loss." "Was she your wife?" "No, a friend." "Doctor." Crawford looked at him carefully. "Mr. Han, I have to ask, are you prepared for what you're taking on? Raising a child alone is incredibly difficult, especially an infant." "I understand." "Do you? Because this isn't just about providing food and shelter. Children need emotional stability, consistency, love. They need someone who can put their needs first, always. Jun-seok thought about Evelyn's last words, about the promise he'd made. She'll have that. How can you be sure? Because I've already started loving her. The words surprised him as much as they surprised the doctor, but as soon as he said them, he realized they were true. Somewhere in the past 24 hours, this tiny person had become the most important thing in his world. Doctor. Crawford smiled for the first time since they'd met. In that case, let me give you some advice about formula feeding and sleep schedules. By evening, Jun-seok had a legal identity for Lily, a pediatrician who would provide ongoing care and a crash course in infant care. What he didn't have was a plan for dealing with his organization. That problem solved itself when his phone rang at 9 p.m. The shipment was intercepted, Kang said without preamble. Federal agents were waiting at the drop point. Jun-seok felt his blood turn to ice. How many of our people were arrested? None. We got tipped off at the last minute and aborted, but Jun-seok, someone leaked the information. Someone in our organization is working with the feds. Do we know who? Not yet. But Director Kim is flying in tomorrow to handle this personally. He wants everyone in Seattle for a full investigation. Jun-seok looked at Lily, sleeping peacefully in her carrier. A full investigation meant interrogations, lie detector tests, and very likely executions. It also meant he'd be under constant surveillance until the leak was found. There's something else, Kang continued. The family in Seattle, the one Director Kim wanted you to handle. They're gone, disappeared sometime last night. Their house is empty. Gone where? No one knows, but Director Kim thinks it's connected to the leak. He thinks they were warned. Jun-seok closed his eyes. The walls were closing in from all sides. Kang, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I'm listening. I want you to take Yoon and get out of Oregon tonight. Drive straight to Seattle, check into a hotel and wait for Director Kim. Tell him I'm handling some loose ends here, and I'll be there tomorrow. What kind of loose ends? The kind that don't concern you. There was a long pause. Boss, what are you planning? I'm planning to keep my promise to a dying woman. Jun-seok. This isn't a discussion, Kang. This is an order. Take Yoon and go to Seattle. Don't look back, don't ask questions, and don't try to contact me until I contact you. And if Director Kim asks where you are, tell him the truth. Tell him I'm dealing with a personal matter. He's not going to like that. I know. Jun-seok ended the call and immediately started packing. He had maybe 6 hours before Director Kim realized he wasn't coming to Seattle, and maybe 12 hours before they started looking for him seriously. He looked around the hotel room that had become Lily's first real home. In the past day, he'd changed more diapers than he'd thought possible, learned to mix formula in the dark, and discovered that he could function on 2 hours of sleep if the alternative was letting her cry. He'd also realized something that terrified him. He would do anything to protect her, anything at all. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. We need to talk. A friend. Jun-seok stared at the message, his mind racing. In his world, anonymous messages usually meant one of two things, an opportunity or a trap. Another message appeared. It's about the baby. And about your future. Jun-seok looked at Lily, then at his packed bags, then at his phone. He was already breaking every rule he'd ever lived by. What was one more? He typed back, where and when? The response was immediate. Parking garage across from your hotel. Level 3. Come alone. Jun-seok looked at Lily again. Taking her to a meeting with an unknown contact was insane. Leaving her alone in the hotel room was equally insane. He made his choice. 20 minutes later, he walked into the parking garage carrying Lily in her carrier. The third level was dimly lit and mostly empty, but he could see a figure standing beside a black sedan at the far end. As he got closer, he recognized the person waiting for him, Detective Aaron Morales, the local cop who'd been investigating the area where they'd conducted their operation. Detective, Jun-seok said carefully, this is unexpected. I imagine it is, Morales replied, his eyes moving to the baby carrier. That's her, isn't it? Evelyn Harper's daughter. Jun-seok's hand moved instinctively toward his concealed weapon. I don't know what you're talking about. Relax, Mr. Han. If I wanted to arrest you, you'd already be in handcuffs. Morales stepped closer, his expression serious, but not hostile. I know who you are, I know what you do, and I know what happened in that house last night. How? Because I've been watching that area for weeks, waiting for someone like you to show up. What I didn't expect was to see you leave with a baby. Jun Seok felt trapped. What do you want? To make you an offer. What kind of offer? Morales looked down at Lily, who was awake and looking around with curious eyes, the kind that lets you keep her. I'm listening. Your organization is finished, Mr. Han. We've been building a case against them for 2 years, and tonight's failed shipment was just the beginning. Within a week, every major player will be in federal custody. Including me? That depends. On what? On whether you're willing to disappear. Jun Seok studied the detective's face, looking for signs of deception. Why would you help me? Because I've been a cop for 15 years, and I've seen what happens to kids who get caught in the crossfire of adult mistakes. That little girl deserves better. What are you proposing? New identities for both of you. Clean papers, clean backgrounds, a chance to start over somewhere far away from here. In exchange for what? Information about your organization's operations, names, dates, locations, financial records, everything you know. Jun Seok felt the weight of the choice settling on his shoulders. Betraying his organization meant signing his own death warrant if he was ever found, but refusing meant losing Lily forever. How do I know you won't just arrest me after I give you what you want? Because I'm not interested in you, Mr. Han. I'm interested in the people above you, the ones who order families killed over $50,000. The reference to the Seattle family wasn't lost on Jun Seok. Morales knew about the order from Director Kim. You've been watching me for a while, long enough to know that you're not the same man who walked into that house last night. That baby changed you. Jun Seok looked down at Lily, who was reaching up toward him with tiny fingers. Without thinking, he offered her his hand and she grasped his finger with surprising strength. What kind of life could I give her if I'm always looking over my shoulder? The kind where you're alive to give her anything at all, Morales said quietly. Mr. Han, your organization is going down whether you help us or not. The only question is whether you go down with them or start fresh with your daughter. She's not my daughter, isn't she? Jun Seok looked at Lily again, at the trust in her eyes, at the way she seemed to know he would protect her no matter what. If I do this, he said slowly, if I give you what you want, what happens next? You and Lily disappear. New names, new location, enough money to start over. You'll never see anyone from your old life again, but you'll be free to build a new one. And if they find me, they won't. We're very good at making people disappear when we need to. Jun Seok thought about Evelyn's last words, about the promise he'd made, about the choice between the life he'd built and the life he could build. I need guarantees, he said finally. What kind of guarantees? That she'll be safe, that if something happens to me, she'll be taken care of, that she'll never have to pay for my mistakes. Done. And I want to choose where we go, within reason. Somewhere quiet, somewhere she can grow up normal. Any preferences? Jun Seok thought about it. Somewhere with good schools, and snow in the winter. She should see snow. Morales smiled. I think we can arrange that. Lily made a small sound, and both men looked down at her. She was still holding Jun Seok's finger, her dark eyes moving between the two adults, as if she understood the importance of their conversation. Okay, Jun Seok said quietly. Let's do it. You're sure? Jun Seok lifted Lily out of her carrier and held her against his chest. She settled against him immediately, trusting and warm. I'm sure, he said. I broke every rule to get here. Might as well break one more. 6 months later, David Gray stood in the kitchen of his small house in Missoula, Montana, warming a bottle for his daughter. The name still felt strange sometimes, both the new identity and the word daughter, but it was getting more natural every day. Lily sat in her high chair, babbling happily and banging a plastic spoon against the tray. She'd grown so much since that night in Oregon, filling out from the malnourished infant he'd found into a healthy, happy baby who smiled at everything and everyone. Okay, Princess, he said, testing the formula temperature on his wrist. Breakfast is ready. She reached for the bottle eagerly, and he helped her hold it while she drank. The pediatrician here, Dr. Sarah Chen, had said Lily was developing perfectly, No lasting effects from those early weeks of deprivation, no delays or problems, just a normal, healthy baby girl. The house was small but comfortable, 2 bedrooms, a fenced yard, quiet neighbors who minded their own business. David worked from home as a freelance translator, a job that let him be with Lily while still earning enough to support them both. The Federal Witness Protection Program had provided the seed money, but he was determined to be self-sufficient. He'd kept his promise to Evelyn in ways both big and small. Lily's room was painted yellow with white clouds on the ceiling. He'd framed the letter Evelyn had written for her and put it in a safe deposit box, along with the few photos of Nathan he'd been able to find online. When Lily was old enough, she'd know about her parents, about how much they'd loved her, about the sacrifice her mother had made. But she'd also know that she was wanted, that someone had chosen to love her even when it cost them everything. The doorbell rang, and David felt the familiar spike of anxiety that came with unexpected visitors. 6 months of safety hadn't erased the instincts of 15 years in organized crime. "Stay here, baby girl," he said, settling Lily in her playpen with some toys. Through the peephole, he saw a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and a professional demeanor. She was holding a clipboard and wearing a badge that identified her as being from the local social services office. David's blood turned to ice. This was his worst nightmare, someone coming to take Lily away, to question his right to have her. He opened the door but kept the chain engaged. "Can I help you?" "Mr. Grace, I'm Sophia Reynolds from Child and Family Services. I was hoping we could talk for a few minutes." "About what?" "About your daughter, Lily. We've received some questions about her documentation." David felt the world tilting around him. What kind of questions? "May I come in?" This would be easier to discuss inside. Every instinct screamed at him to refuse, to grab Lily and run, but running would only confirm whatever suspicions had brought this woman to his door. "Of course," he said, removing the chain and opening the door. Sophia Reynolds entered and immediately smiled at the sight of Lily playing happily in her pen. "She's beautiful. How old is she now?" 13 months. "And you've been her primary caregiver since her mother died about 7 months ago." Sophia made notes on her clipboard. "I have to say, Mr. Grace, your home is lovely, very child-friendly. Lily seems happy and well cared for. Thank you. The reason I'm here is that we've been trying to verify Lily's birth records, and we've run into some inconsistencies." David's mouth went dry. "What kind of inconsistencies?" "Well, according to our records, Lily Grace Harper was born in Portland, Oregon, but there's no record of her mother's death in that state. There's also no record of you being granted legal guardianship through the normal channels." "It was a complicated situation," David said carefully. "I'm sure it was. That's why I'm here, to help sort it out. You see, when children don't have proper documentation, it can cause problems later. School enrollment, medical care, that sort of thing." Sophia sat down across from David, her expression sympathetic but professional. "Mr. Grace, I want you to know that my primary concern is Lily's welfare. She's clearly thriving in your care, and I have no intention of disrupting that unless absolutely necessary. But I do need to understand how she came to be in your care. The official story doesn't quite add up." David looked at Lily, who had abandoned her toys and was pulling herself up on the side of the playpen, trying to get his attention. She'd started walking a few weeks ago, and her favorite game was escaping from any enclosed space. "Her mother was a friend," he said finally. She was in a bad situation. Homeless, no family support. When she died, there was no one else. And the father died before Lily was born. "I see." Sophia made more notes. "Mr. Grace, I'm going to be honest with you. The documentation you provided when you moved here appears to be professionally created." David felt his heart stop. "I don't understand." "The birth certificate, the guardianship papers, even your own identification. They're all technically valid, but they show signs of being produced by someone with access to official systems and considerable expertise." She looked up from her clipboard, her eyes kind but serious. "In my experience, that usually means one of two things. Either you're involved in something illegal, or you're trying to escape from something illegal." David stared at her, unsure how to respond. Lily chose that moment to succeed in climbing out of her playpen, landing on her bottom with a soft thud, and immediately crawling toward him. "Dada," she said clearly, reaching up to be picked up. It was the first time she'd said the word, and despite everything, David felt his heart swell with pride and love. He lifted her into his arms and she immediately snuggled against his chest. "She loves you," Sophia observed. "I love her too." "That's obvious. Which is why I'm going to make you an offer, Mr. Grace." "What kind of offer?" "The kind where we make this situation official and legal, no questions asked about the past." David stared at her. "Why would you do that?" "Because I've been doing this job for 10 years, and I've learned to recognize when a child is truly loved and well cared for. Lily is both of those things. Whatever brought you two together, whatever mistakes were made along the way, the result is a happy, healthy child with a devoted father. I'm not her biological father. Biology doesn't make a family, Mr. Grace. Love does. Choice does. Commitment does. You've been her father in every way that matters for 7 months." Lily babbled something and patted David's cheek with her tiny hand. He kissed her forehead, breathing in the sweet scent of baby shampoo and innocence. "What would I need to do?" he asked. "Formal adoption proceedings. It'll take a few months, but at the end of it, you'll be Lily's legal father in every sense. No more questions, no more documentation issues. And you won't investigate how we got here. Mr. Grace, some stories are better left untold. What matters is where you go from here." David looked down at Lily, who was getting sleepy in his arms. Her eyes were drooping, and she was making the soft humming sound she always made when she was content. "Okay," he said quietly. "Let's make it official." Sophia smiled. "I'll start the paperwork this week." After she left, David sat in his living room holding Lily as she napped. Through the window he could see snow beginning to fall, the first snow of the season. Lily would love it when she woke up. She'd press her face against the glass and laugh at the swirling flakes, just like she did with everything else that caught her attention. He thought about Evelyn, about the promise he'd made in that cold, abandoned house. Lily would know she was loved. She would know her parents hadn't abandoned her. But she would also know that sometimes love meant making impossible choices, breaking every rule, and starting over completely. His phone buzzed with a text from Detective Morales, who checked in every few months. "How are you both doing?" David typed back, "We're good. Really good." "Any regrets?" David looked down at Lily's sleeping face, at the trust and peace written there. He thought about the life he'd left behind, the power, the money, the respect that came from fear. Then he thought about this life, quiet mornings, first words, tiny hands that reached for him when she was scared. "None," he typed back, "not a single one." Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the world in fresh white. Inside, David Grace held his daughter and watched the flakes dance past the window, each one unique and perfect in its own way, just like the family they'd become. The sound of small feet running down the hallway woke David at 6:30 a.m., followed by the familiar thud of his bedroom door being thrown open with more enthusiasm than coordination. "Daddy! Daddy! It's snowing again." 6-year-old Lily Grace bounded onto his bed, her dark hair wild from sleep and her eyes bright with excitement. She'd grown into a beautiful, confident child who approached the world with the same fearless curiosity she'd shown as a baby. "I can see that, Princess," David said, pulling her into a hug. "Want to make pancakes and watch it fall?" "Yes. Can we make the ones with blueberries? And can we build a snowman after breakfast?" "Of course we can." As they headed to the kitchen, Lily chattering about her plans for the snow day, David marveled at how normal this felt, how completely this had become his life. The man who had once commanded a criminal organization now spent his mornings making cartoon-shaped pancakes and listening to 6-year-old theories about why snowflakes were different sizes. "Daddy?" Lily said as she climbed onto her chair at the kitchen table. "Yes, baby?" "Mrs. Patterson says we're supposed to bring our dads to school next week for Father's Day. Will you come?" "I wouldn't miss it." "Good. I want to show everyone my daddy." The simple pride in her voice made David's chest tight with emotion. She had no idea how much those words meant to him, how they validated every choice he'd made, every rule he'd broken to get here. "What are we going to do at school?" he asked, mixing pancake batter. "We're supposed to talk about our families. About where we come from and stuff like that." David paused in his stirring. They'd had versions of this conversation before, but Lily was getting older, more curious about her origins. "What do you want to tell them?" "I want to tell them about my first mommy and daddy. the ones who loved me before I was born, and about how you became my daddy because you promised to take care of me. David had told her an age-appropriate version of the story, that her birth parents had died when she was a baby, and that he had promised to love her and keep her safe. As she got older, he would tell her more, but for now, she understood that she was chosen, wanted, and deeply loved. "That sounds perfect," Amy said, pouring batter into the pan. "Daddy? Do you think my first mommy and daddy would be happy that I'm with you?" David thought about Evelyn's last words, about the desperate love in her eyes as she begged him to save her daughter. "I think they would be very happy, Lily. I think they would love knowing that you're safe and loved and growing up to be such an amazing little girl." "Good," she said matter-of-factly. "I think so too." After breakfast, they bundled up in winter coats and boots to build the promised snowman. Lily insisted on making it daddy-sized, which resulted in a lopsided but enthusiastic creation that she declared perfect. "Can we give him a name?" she asked, stepping back to admire their work. "What do you want to call him?" "Nathan," she said without hesitation. "Like my first daddy." David felt his throat tighten. "That's a beautiful name, Princess." "I think he would like our snowman. Do you think he can see us from heaven?" "I think he can. And I think he's very proud of you." They spent the morning playing in the snow, having snowball fights and making snow angels. Lily's laughter echoed through the quiet neighborhood, a sound of pure joy that never failed to make David smile. Later, as they sat by the fireplace with hot chocolate, Lily curled up against his side with a book. "Daddy, will you read to me?" "Of course." As he read about brave princesses and magical kingdoms, David thought about the journey that had brought them here. 7 years ago, he had been Han Jun-seok, a man who solved problems with violence and measured success in fear and money. Now he was David Grace, a man whose greatest achievement was the trust of a little girl who called him Daddy. He had broken every rule of his old life to build this new one. He had betrayed his organization, abandoned his identity, and walked away from everything he had once thought mattered. And he would do it all again in a heartbeat. "Daddy?" Lily's sleepy voice interrupted his thoughts. "Yes, baby. I love you. I love you too, Princess. More than all the stars in the sky." "That's a lot," she said with a yawn. "It is, but not as much as I love you." She giggled softly and settled more comfortably against him. Within minutes, she was asleep, her breathing deep and peaceful. David looked down at her face, still amazed by the miracle of her presence in his life. This little girl had saved him in ways she would never know. She had given him purpose, taught him what real strength looked like, and shown him that love wasn't a weakness. It was the most powerful force in the world. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing their small corner of Montana in pristine white. Inside, a former crime boss held his daughter and marveled at the beautiful life they had built together, one broken rule at a time. Years after that night in Oregon, David Grace stood in the doorway of his 16-year-old daughter's room, watching her pack for her first overnight school trip. Lily had grown into a remarkable young woman, intelligent, compassionate, and strong in ways that reminded him daily of her mother's fierce spirit. "You sure you have everything?" he asked. "Dad, I've checked my list 3 times, she said, with the patient exasperation that only teenagers could master. "I'll be fine." "I know you will. Doesn't mean I won't worry." She looked up from her suitcase and smiled, the same radiant smile that had been melting his heart for 16 years. "I'll call you every night, okay?" "Deal." As she continued packing, David noticed the small framed photo on her nightstand, the one picture of Nathan and Evelyn he'd been able to find, taken at a construction company picnic a few months before Lily was born. Evelyn was laughing at something Nathan had said, her hand resting on her pregnant belly, both of them glowing with happiness and anticipation. "Dad." Lily's voice was softer now, more serious. "Yeah? I've been thinking about applying for early admission to college." "Oh, where are you thinking?" "Pre-med programs. I want to be a pediatrician." David felt pride swell in his chest. "That's a wonderful goal, Lily. What made you decide?" "I want to help kids who don't have anyone else to help them, like Dr. Crawford helped me when I was little." She didn't know the full story yet, about the abandoned house, about Evelyn's death, about the choices that had brought them together. But somehow, she had inherited her mother's compassion and her father's determination to protect the innocent. "Your parents would be so proud of you," David said quietly. "All 3 of them," she corrected with a smile. Later that evening, after Lily had left for her trip, David sat in his study looking through a box he kept locked in his desk drawer. Inside were the few mementos from that night that changed everything. Evelyn's letter to Lily, the hospital bracelet from Lily's first checkup, and a single photo he'd taken of her sleeping in his arms during those first terrifying, wonderful days. He pulled out his phone and scrolled to a contact he rarely used but never deleted. Detective Morales, now retired but still checking in occasionally. "David." Aaron's voice was warm when he answered. "How are you both doing?" "Good. Really good. Lily's 16 now, if you can believe it." 16? God, where does the time go? How is she? Amazing. She wants to be a doctor, says she wants to help kids who don't have anyone else. Sounds like her mother's daughter. And her father's, David said quietly. Both of them. You did good, David. You kept your promise. David looked at the photo of baby Lily sleeping peacefully in his arms, completely trusting, completely loved. Yeah, he said. I think I did. After ending the call, David walked to Lily's room and stood in the doorway where he'd watched her pack earlier. The room was neat and organized, decorated with photos of friends, academic awards, and dreams of the future. On her desk was a college application essay she'd been working on, titled The Power of Chosen Family. He didn't read it. That was her privacy to maintain, but he could see the first line. Sometimes the greatest love comes from the most unexpected places. David smiled and turned off the light. Tomorrow Lily would call from her school trip, full of stories and excitement. Next year, she'd probably be calling from college, starting her journey toward becoming the doctor she dreamed of being. And someday, she'd have a family of her own, passing on the love and strength that had carried her through her first 16 years. The promise he'd made to a dying mother in an abandoned house had been kept. Lily knew she was loved. She knew her parents hadn't abandoned her, and she knew that sometimes families are created not by blood, but by choice, sacrifice, and the willingness to break every rule for love. Outside, snow began to fall again, just as it had that first night in Montana, when he'd held her as she slept and marveled at the miracle of their unlikely family. Some things never changed. The snow still fell. He still worried about her, and he still couldn't imagine his life without her. But some things had changed completely. The man who had once ruled through fear now lived through love. The criminal who had once broken laws now spent his days following the only rule that truly mattered, protecting and nurturing the precious life that had been entrusted to his care. Han Jun-seok had died in that abandoned house in Oregon, and David Grace had been born. It was the best trade he'd ever made. As he settled into bed, David's phone buzzed with a text from Lily. Made it safely to the hotel. Love you, Dad. Thanks for everything. He typed back, Love you too, Princess. Sweet dreams. Then he added, almost without thinking, Your mom would be so proud. The response came quickly. I know, all three of them would be. David smiled and set his phone aside. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the world in fresh possibility. Inside, a father slept peacefully, knowing that the greatest rule he'd ever broken had led to the greatest love he'd ever known. Some promises are worth everything. Some love is worth breaking every rule. And sometimes the most beautiful families are born from the most impossible choices.